Ever since his rework, Fiddlesticks has been terrorizing League of Legends. His vision control, high AP damage, and sustain, combined with his insane CC potential, makes him one of the strongest junglers in the game right now. So today, I'm going to be taking the time to show you guys how to play Fiddlesticks. This video will go over Fiddle's abilities and combo, runes, build, and early pathing. If you have any more questions after watching this video, make sure to subscribe and be on the lookout for my Fiddlesticks Over-Explain guide, where I break down one of my challenger games and show you exactly what I do to carry on Fiddlesticks. Alright everyone, let's go ahead and get started. First off, we're just going to start with Fiddlesticks' passive, which is a harmless scarecrow. It replaces his trinket with scarecrow effigies, which essentially just act as wards. That's how you're going to be using them. You'll place them almost like you would Rumble's ult. You'll if I'm holding down my ward button right now, and I can basically target where Fiddlesticks' effigy is going to run to when it gets spotted by an enemy. So if I was to place it here and an enemy came up from either side of this Fiddlesticks effigy, which to the enemy it looks like me, by the way, is going to cast an ability in this direction and sort of walk that way. And that's how you use it. There's supposed to be some sort of level of trickery that you use with these, I think, but to be honest, I've never seen anybody do anything like this except for once on the front page of Reddit, and it doesn't really seem practical. So you're really just going to be using them as wards in the early game, and once you hit level 6, they actually gain the effect of a sweeper would, and you can use them also to sweep wards and clear vision, which can help you trigger your ults and whatnot later in the game. So that is it for the effigies. That's all I really want to talk about there. Let's go ahead. I'm going to skip Fiddlesticks' Q, and I'm going to jump in and talk about his E, which is Reap. Now, this slows an enemy, and it has sort of a weird hitbox here where it's sort of curved, but if you hit somebody in that circle there, it will silence them, and anybody hit by it at all is slowed, and if you hit them in the circle, it will silence them. Just like that, for a period of time that I believe goes up as you level it. Now, that's going to be, you mostly use this to leash camps in the early game, like to drag them over to you, and then maybe as a little bit of harass. But later, especially once you hit level 6, this is actually going to be part of your CC combo, and it's going to be important to do this right. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and go into Fiddlesticks' W, which is Bountiful Harvest. It's very similar to Fiddlesticks' old W, his drain ability, but now it is AoE, and it'll drain from anything around you in a fairly large circle. Now, when you use it, at the end, the final tick here will do damage based on percent missing HP. So basically, the lower their health is, the more damage your W is going to do, right? And another thing to know is that when you get a full channel off, the cooldown is then reduced down to 60% of the remaining cooldown is reduced, which is very, very important. It means you want to make sure you're getting that full channel off. It's really annoying if you accidentally cancel it while you're clearing the jungle. It'll slow you down a lot, and you're going to want to make sure that you don't do that, and maybe don't cast your W if you think you're about to be CC'd. Very important. All right. Now I'm going to talk about Fiddlesticks' Q ability, which is Terrify. Now this is probably Fiddle's most important ability in his kit. It's certainly sort of the most confusing. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this than I did on the others. Now, first off, what you need to know about Fiddlesticks' Q is that while unseen and out of combat, damaging an enemy with a spell terrifies them for 1 second. So I'm going to show you exactly what that means. I'm going to spawn an enemy dummy here. Now, the dummy does not have vision of this bush here. So, if I was to Q him right now, okay, he's not feared or anything, obviously. He has full vision of me. But if I'm to step inside this bush, and I'm going to have to awkwardly wait for a second here, and now I E him, you see he's feared. Now he doesn't move because he's a dummy and he has no legs, but an enemy champion would then walk away from me. That's what fear does. It slows them and it makes them walk away from you. So that is sort of how that ability works. It's in a very important part of your combo. Notice how even though he can see me right now, the moment I step into this bush, he's still feared, even though he only lost sight of me for 1 second. Now I'll talk about the other parts of Fiddle's Q. Important to note that this Terrify time is 1 second at level 1, and it goes up by, I want to say, 0.25 seconds every level, up to, I think, 2 seconds total, which is a very, very long CC. Like, 2 seconds is a very long time. Now let's talk about the active. The active is Terrify. Terrifies a target for 1 second and deals percent HP based on their current health, meaning the more health they have, the more damage that it does. So that is what that looks like. There's a small delay, but then it hits them, it fears them, and okay, one more thing I want to talk about is how if I fear them again while this circle is still on them, meaning they can't be feared again, instead of fearing them, it deals double the damage. It goes from 6% to 12%, and the AP scaling ratio also doubles. This is very, very important and is going to be a big part of our combo coming up here. Okay, now let's talk about Fiddlesticks' final ability, his ultimate. Let's see here. I'm going to level up to 6, and we'll just put points in your W here. So, Fiddlesticks' ultimate, you stand still and you channel dash, basically the same as Fiddle's old ult. Looks just like that, and it does a huge AoE damage crow storm. Okay, and you can use it to go over ledges, so it can be an escape, or you can get like creative with your ganks. That's not really a gank, but sort of a common gank path would be maybe ganking the enemy under their turrets, or in the mid lane, you know, something like that. That's how you want to use it. Okay. Now, when I cast my ult here, if there are crows around this thing's head, that means that my fear is going to trigger on them because they don't have vision of me, okay? You can proc your passive Q with your ult. So it'll look something like this. Now, see those crows there? That means that he's going to get feared when I land on him. Okay, very, very important. And that is pretty much it for the R. I do want to say that, actually, I'll save that for the combo. All right, so now let's go ahead and get talking about Fiddlesticks' combo. I'm going to put maybe one more dummy up here because usually there's more than one person, though I guess it doesn't really matter. So generally speaking, you're going to want to be ulting from out of vision. This is going to happen a lot. Now, the way that you do your max damage combo and everything is I'm going to ult on top of them. I'm going to immediately, as soon as I can, Q the target that I want to kill most, because that's going to be dealing more damage to them, percent HP damage. And then I'm going to try to use my E essentially right before my Q fear time runs out. So it's going to be important to note if your target has Mercury Shreds or any other form of tenacity, because that's going to reduce your fear time, and then you can't chain your E. But when done correctly, it's going to look something like this. And I probably eat a little bit too soon there, but what ends up happening is, and actually I'm going to level up so it's a little bit easier. It's sort of hard to get an idea of what I'm talking about here. But when I have the full Q, that's a 2-second fear, I can ult, use my E immediately, and then I E right before the Q, the fear fault runs out, and basically they're chain CC'd for this. E silences them for 1.25 seconds, I think. Yeah, 1.25 seconds. And the Q fears for 2 seconds. So if they don't have Mercury Shreds or any form of tenacity, they essentially can't do anything at all for 3.25 seconds, which is an insane amount of time in League of Legends. And yeah, it's enough to basically be able to 100-0 any sort of carry champion at all. So this is what makes Fiddlesticks so strong. When this combo is done correctly, the carries literally cannot react. And then you'll sort of end up casting W there too. Now it's important, one of the things I did wrong at first when I was playing Fiddlesticks is I would always want to do my combo, and then I would immediately cast W. But it's actually, your ult does more damage than your W, so it's more important that if the enemy champions are running around, that you're sort of chasing them to make sure you get all of your crows to hit them constantly, okay? That's going to be an important part. And also just so you're not ridding yourself and you're not super easy to just like get hit by a skill shot or something like that. So that's something that you're going to want to think about. But I mean, that's essentially it. You'll be using, you're going to be buying a lot of, oops. you're going to be buying a lot of pink words constantly on this champion to sort of make sure that you're denying vision and you can get these big ults off. So like I'll pink here to know that my ult is going to get the fear, or I'll use this. This is the sweeper range. So I know anywhere inside here, I'm probably clear to get my ult off and just do this combo. And that is how you do Fiddlesticks' combo. And if you're doing this right, you're well on your way to playing Fiddlesticks correctly. So you'll be way ahead of most people that are new to learning this champion. All right, let's go ahead and get started on Fiddlesticks' runes. All right, so let's hop in and get started on these runes here. Fun fact, I was going to edit out my friends list because somebody commented that that was sort of weird to see on the side, but cool thing is that there's a really common League of Legends bug right now where your friends list just doesn't load. So I don't actually have to do that. Great. Let's jump in. Fiddlesticks' runes. Now Fiddlesticks has a little bit of flexibility with his runes, to be honest with you. There's quite a few things that are good. So let's go ahead and get started. You're always going to be taking domination. Keystone wise, you have two choices, either electrocute or dark harvest. Now, win rate wise, both of these runes are like pretty much identical in win rate and play rate. So it's sort of hard to say for sure definitively that one is better than the other. All I know for sure is that electrocute is sort of better in the 1v1 and in the early game, and in the late game, dark harvest is going to be better for the sort of big wombo AoE ults and whatnot. Now, I have missed a few kills in the past because I had dark harvest early game over electrocute. So recently, I've been sort of sticking with electrocute. But again, to be honest, dark harvest is kind of the more fun rune. It adds this sort of little fun mini game of stacking that, and yeah, it's just kind of fun. So choose what you want here. Late game or early game is pretty much what it comes down to. Now, next here we have cheap shot or sudden impact, which you can take. Now, this is pretty simple. There's sort of a magic pen build you can go with Fiddlesticks, and if you're going to be going that build, I think sudden impact is the way to go for sure, because you get more value out of the additional magic pen, because magic pen is better the more of it you have, if that makes sense. Because it becomes closer and closer to dealing true damage. But if you're against, like, say, a bunch of tanks, or maybe you have too much AP damage on your team, it's better to just take cheap shot and get that free true damage in there. It's going to be more value out of that right there. That's it for that row. Next up, we have a choice between Ghost Poro or Eyeball Collection. You could even take Zombie Ward. I typically go Ghost Poro. It works really well with your effigies because they have a really low cooldown, and it just gives you kind of a insane amount of vision control. If you don't feel like playing that mini game or you just don't want to worry about it, you can just go for the Eyeball Collection route. But again, I usually go Ghost Poro, and it does have a slightly higher win rate, though there's not that many games played with it. So take from that what you will. Finally here, we have Relentless Hunter or Ultimate Hunter. Most people run Ultimate Hunter. I run Ultimate Hunter. This champion, you're going to be throwing out ults, and sometimes, I'm going to be honest, you're just going to whiff them, and people aren't going to do what you think they're going to do. And yeah, basically, you just want to be able to get your ult as low of a cooldown as possible, as it is your main engage and pick ability. And yeah, when this gets stacked, you have your ult late game at like 30 or 40 seconds long. You'll be ulting twice per fight. It's pretty insane. So I would definitely recommend Ultimate Hunter personally. Now, the secondary runes are a bit weird. There's quite a few choices here. If you want to go for the sorcery route, I would probably recommend Nimbus Cloak because it helps with your flash ults to get a little bit more distance traveled there. And because Fiddlesticks has no mobility, the movement speed after you smite or, again, flash can help you get out of tricky situations that you don't want to be in. In the second row here, you can either go Absolute Focus or Transcendence. Absolute Focus is nice because you get, you're going to be full HP when you're doing your combo, your ult combo or whatever. It also helps speed up your jungle clear quite a bit. Transcendence is nice because CDR is just, again, really, really good on Fiddlesticks. It's more fears from your Q, more silences and slows from your E, and most importantly, more ults. So CDR is very, very useful, but it does feel weird to take Transcendence in the jungle because you're just like, you don't have a rune until you're level 10, and sometimes the games are just over before then. So I tend to not take Transcendence anymore. Now, you can also run Gathering Storm if you just really want to play this late game monster build. This could also be a route you would go. Very, very possible. Now, the only other option I mean, there's also like a precision tree option where you do something like this, or maybe you take tenacity, you know, something like that. You have options here. This, I don't see too many people take. It's not that popular, and I probably wouldn't worry about that. But the other most popular tree that I'm going to talk about here is inspiration, and this is always going to look like this pretty much. If you're planning on building Azanias in the game, this could definitely be a good way to go. It gives you a little bit of free gold here from the stopwatch, and more CDR again, which as we know is really, really useful. So this page is also pretty strong. I don't have that much experience with it. I'm probably going to keep testing it more in the future here. But yeah, this is something to look for if you're planning on building Azanias. Now in the stat shards here, you have two options. You can either go Adaptive Force or CDR. Fiddlesticks doesn't really need the extra AP. It doesn't speed up his clear at all, though it will lower his early game damage a little bit in like 1v1s and stuff. I generally think CDR is probably better. It has a bit of a higher win rate, and again, we know how powerful CDR is on Fiddlesticks in general, so lately this is what I've been taking. In the secondary tree, I always take AP. In the last one, you have an option between health, armor, or magic resist. Now, because of the way Fiddlesticks kit works, you're not going to be getting autoed that much, so taking this armor isn't super valuable. You also don't need it to clear your jungle, so I would not recommend going armor unless maybe they're just really, really AD heavy. I don't know. It just doesn't seem that valuable. More valuable is probably either magic resistance, or if they don't have too many AP threats, you can also just run HP. Getting more HP helps you survive when you go in with your ult and is very, very nice. So good to have. That's about it for Fiddlesticks' runes. Let's go ahead into his build. All right, Fiddlesticks' build. Now, this is probably the thing I'm least sure on out of everything I've spoken to so far this video. There are a lot of good items with Fiddlesticks right now. And basically, I've sort of found that I just pick per the situation that I'm in. But let me go ahead and get started here. This is what you buy level 1. This is probably one of the only champions in the game that doesn't want to buy refillable right at the very beginning. That is because your clear is so strong. You can clear it and have full health. And so you might as well instead buy this control ward. And I'll usually buy a health potion too, just in case I get in a fight, but you don't really need it. Having this extra control ward here at the beginning can help prevent Fiddlesticks from getting invaded in the early game, which is really important. I'll show you sort of how I place my control ward once we get into the early clearing, but this is how I start every game. If you're not comfortable doing this, you can just buy a refillable, but this is certainly what I recommend, and it does have quite a bit of a higher win rate than starting refillable. And if you're ever wondering, when I talk about win rates, I use stats pulled from Lolalytics, so that's how I get sort of all this information that helps me make my decisions and stuff like that. Now, the first item that I rush usually on Fiddlesticks is Sork Shoes. Pen is really nice for Fiddlesticks because he does a lot of percent health damage. He's sort of like Elise in that he has total health damage on his Q, and then he has missing health damage on his W. Which is very, very nice and allows you to rush these Sork Shoes, which sort of helps shore up Fiddle's weakness in the early game of having no mobility and not having any escapes. So this is a pretty effective buy. You also don't need the AP to clear because of the nature of Fiddlesticks' W. So this is usually what I rush every game. I saw a good Fiddlesticks player do this, so ever since then I've started doing it as well. Second up, we go ahead and we rush the Runic Echoes. This is nice. It gives us AP, it gives us CDR, and a little bit of mana, which are all things that are really nice to have on Fiddle. And I mean, that's pretty obvious. You go Blue Smite because you're not really going to be auto-attacking that much. And yeah, that's it for that. That's pretty obvious. Now, after this is where it gets a little bit complicated and confusing. Just because there's so many items that work well with Fiddle's kit. It seems to be that the best item to rush, second item, is Proto Belt. Now this gives us 10% CDR. We again know how powerful that is. It gives us a little bit of ability power, which is nice, and some health, which is nice. But what we really want is that active ability, which dashes us forward, which helps us go for those sort of longer engages with our ult. And it also helps us shove waves a little bit because Fiddle's pretty weak at that because his W has reduced damage to minions. And then we can also use it to dodge skill shots and perhaps escape if we get collapsed on, which is really, really important. That's what makes this item so strong. Now, Zhonya's, everybody sort of thinks of Zhonya's as like the Fiddlesticks item. This is really good if they have AD and you're in a yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If they have a bunch of AD, this gives you more survivability. The active's also really nice. You can't W while you use Zanya's, but you can. Your ult damage still goes off when you use Zanya's, so it can be very, very useful. Liandry's is really nice. It's sort of the tank buster item. It gives you HP, which is great, and it makes your E poke damage do a lot more. Your E counts as CC, and so it procs that sort of double damage that Liandry's does toward CC'd targets. Now, an alternative build here is the pen build that I tend to go when I'm the only AP champion on my team. And we take Sudden Impact, we take Sork Shoes, Oblivion Orb, and then I usually go for like a heavy AP item like Death Cap or something like that. A very viable option. Now, I don't have this here already, but I want to talk a little bit more. Honestly, you don't have to build like these heavy damage items on Fiddle. You offer a lot of utility to your team, so don't be afraid. If you're against like an Elise, like a bunch of CC, whatever, do not be afraid at all to rush these Mercury treads. Give yourself a little bit of tankiness. Totally fine. Building, well, we're always going to build this Runic Echoes, but then even going like stacking your Merc Treads with a second item, Banshee's Veil, can be very nice. Gives you that spell shield, gives you the extra survivability on your ult, and then this item just gives an insane amount of MR, 60 MR, which is just very, very, very nice to have against maybe like Echo, you know, whoever. Super nice. You can sort of stack this with Zanya's, have a ton of resistances, and then maybe build an HP item somewhere in there to just make you really, really tanky. You've still got all of that. You've got the % health damage, so you're still doing a decent amount of damage. And yeah, you're just super tanky. Very, very useful. So that's sort of your options with Fiddlesticks. Again, it's a lot of options. It's hard to say just always build this. It's not like Rek'Sai. Like, there's tons of different options, and I'm still sort of trying to figure out what I like the best. But this is what I've seen other players do, and based on win rates, this is what I would recommend to you guys. Okay, this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to attempt to do this relatively quickly. This is how I start every game off: Talisman, Health Potion, and a Control Ward. And what I'll usually do, at least when I'm on this side of the map, is I will stand in this bush and try to control this, hopefully with one of my teammates, and not let them get a ward in here. Now, if I'm able to do that successfully, I can drop my pink here, and this is just a really, really great pink to have, especially if the enemy jungler starts here, so then I can see them when they go for this Scuttle Crab here, or maybe if they go for a gank here. Just very, very useful to have. Actually, you want it a little bit more to the right to make sure it covers this full entrance here. But this is one really good place you can place a pink ward. Alternatively, all right, I'm just gonna give myself some gold here. Another good spot, if you're afraid of an invade, is to do something like this. This is a much safer ward you can do. You can sort of drop that there, and then if you're going to start on blue, you can maybe put a ward right here, or an effigy right there. Now, if you're on the opposite side of the map, pink here is probably never going to survive, so I pretty much always end up just putting my pink here to defend my red, because I usually start on the blue side of the map. And then maybe I'll drop an effigy somewhere around here or something like that to try to start stacking up my Ghost Poro. But that is what I do in the early game with my pink wards. So now let's hop into the clear here. I had to restart because I did the clear a little bit weird. The clear is very important. It can be a bit tricky. If you mess up, you're going to cost yourself a lot of time. So I'm going to show you the safest clear. And when I say safest, it's about resetting the leash aggro, resetting the camps, accidentally canceling your W, stuff like that. Very, very easy to do on Fiddlesticks. So yeah, I'm just going to be showing you sort of the easiest thing to do. Good Lord, where's the button I'm looking for? Spawn jungle camps. Okay. So I tend to always start on the blue side of the map because I want to full clear down and do my Krugs last. So that usually looks like starting here, and I'm just going to auto this 3 times while I wait for my W to come off cooldown. And we do this leashless, by the way, which is kind of nice for our laners. Just get an extra auto in there, and now this thing should die. We don't want to have to auto that more than we don't want to have to W that more than twice, or sorry, more than 3 times. So now that we've got this, if we can, I want to use my E there to hit them both. Usually I smite the Grump and then I auto the blue. This is so that these will die at about the same time, because again, remember your W does % HP missing damage or whatever. And now my W is going to finish these off. and we're just going to keep walking down here. Now, hopefully we've warded this, or we just know that we're not going to get invaded here. Either our teammates warded it, we know where the enemy jungler started, you know, whatever. I've actually never been invaded here, except for once by Zach, and I ended up killing him. I don't know why Zach invaded me, but what you do is you walk up here, you E that, and then you auto this. Now, there's a very specific place to stand. You're going to want to practice this. It's where I'm standing right now. There's not much room for error here. And this is where you're going to accidentally be resetting your camps the most. And you can sort of go back and forth and like see when they're, like when the patience timer is going down, when it's going up. This is something you're definitely going to want to practice and not mess up in an actual game, or you're going to cost yourself many seconds. And so we do that, and then we go over here. Usually I E this, maybe auto it once, and I tend to have another smite charge by now, so I smite this so that I can save my W here for when these big things come out. And then I want to auto these and E them, and then my last W will kill them all. This makes me hit level 4, and usually I'm walking here about 3:15, maybe a little bit later depending on how fast I did it. But that's it's a pretty solid, fast clear, completely leashless, which is really nice. And you're usually here in time to contest this Scuttle Crab. Or if there's a gank potential bot lane, you can go for that. Fiddle's ganks are pretty good. Remember, you want to come from behind and then Q them, because again, they walk away from you when they're feared. So if you're behind them, you can force them to walk in like the opposite direction that they want to go. And then you just chain your E like before your Q runs out, so they can't move. But you know, that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to show you really quickly what the clear looks like. Perhaps if you want to start red instead, you can choose to do this leashless. It gets kind of weird if you take a leash, so honestly, you probably should just choose to take it leashless. Here we go, reset the game. I'm just going to go ahead and buy this stuff real quick. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Spawn jungle camps. Again, maybe we place our W, or sorry, our pink right here to defend our blue entrance. Maybe drop a ward here, you know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So when this red spawns, we've still leveled up our W. We're going to auto this, and then we're going to try to stand in this perfect spot right here. Yeah. Maybe you can kind of tell where I'm standing. It's a little weird. Believe me, it's very hard to get this right. So notice this is actually really important. I'm kind of glad I did that. Didn't do it on purpose, but I accidentally canceled my W here. So now I'm just sitting here without a W, and I'm getting mauled. And I'm probably going to die. Okay, I had to use my potion, but we didn't die. But yeah, if you cancel your W, you are completely screwed. So definitely don't do what I just did there, or you're going to have a bad time. So that's sort of the start to that. We clear those two at the same time, and then we walk over here. Usually E that to get it to pull you a little bit faster, and then we'll just start clearing it this way. Notice how I didn't do my Krugs. Honestly, I think it's too slow with only your level 1 W. I think Krugs would just take too long. So I skip that. I go walk here so I can W both of them at the same time. I know that my W was, or that the wolf was low enough that my W would kill it, so that's why I was able to do that. I'm going to smite this for a little bit more HP. And again, we're really low right here because I messed up on the red. We're not usually this low. But one problem with this clear is I'm not level 3 at this point, so I'm doing all of this with only my level 1 W, and that's why we're so low. This is why I don't like to clear like this. I actually literally always start on the blue side of the map, but that's it. And we're usually here about the time Scuttle spawns. The time's a little bit messed up because I've just been resetting. But we are only level 3. We're 1 camp away from 4, but yep, that's the other clear. Normally I would just include the blue clear, but last time I had people asking for the other clear, even though I don't ever do it. I thought I would go ahead and show you guys what that does look like. And again, you can get a leash from red, but it can be a little bit awkward if it gets like the aggro gets messed up. You really don't want them to like leash your red, and then you try to pull it over the raptor, and then you somehow lose aggro. That would be like a pretty big nightmare. You really don't want to fall behind on Fiddle's clear early game, because you are a little bit weak in the early game. You want to get to that level 6 really fast, and you got a fast clear. You know, you don't want to gimp yourself and not have the fast clear. One of the good things about Fiddle. But that's pretty much it for the early pathing. You know, after you do the Scuttle Crab, you can look for a gank. You know, do your ganks with Q and then E. W when you can. Make sure you get that full channel of your W. Try to never cancel it. And, you know, I mean, that's pretty much it for Fiddlesticks, guys. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And if you liked it, consider subscribing. Maybe check out my Twitch, join my Discord, ask me if you have any questions. I'm going to have a Fiddle over-explain guide coming out in a couple days here. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.